and as it says on the tin, I'm here to jabber at ya in all my jet-lagged glory. For I have returned from 3 weeks in the United States. I've been back for a few days though, so I have had some time to adjust back to the time, which really hasn't been so bad this time around. I think it helps that the clocks haven't changed here yet. So there's one less hour of time difference, and that makes all the difference in the world. So yeah, it's been okay, but I feel like I'm still just generally in a state of tiredness all day long. It's just a bit of a drag, but I'm hanging in. I'm hanging in, but I'm not pretending that I'm fully coherent and that this isn't going to be a ramble. Also just full of a lot of random ass things. This was one of my more eccentric visits home, I must say. I think in a nutshell, it's captured by the text exchange that I had with one of my brothers before I even left here to fly to Chicago. He had gotten in touch with me to ask if I wanted to go with him and his family to see the latest Paddington movie. So he was asking about the first Saturday that I was going to be in town to see the movie, and I immediately wrote back like, oh, I would love that. Yeah. And then a few minutes after, I thought about it and I had to go back to him and say like, oh no, I'm sorry. I forgot. That's the weekend I'm going to be in Kansas City for a paranormal conference. As one does. And so, I know my brother already knows that I'm weird. He's weird, but I don't know if he knew the true depths of my weirdness. So anyway, so he's like, okay, well then how about the next Saturday? And I was like, thinking, oh yeah, that might work. But then, oh shoot, sorry. Our niece and I had already made plans to go to the American Girl store in Chicago. Again, as one does, especially when it's two grown-ass adults who are planning to attend without any children involved. So at that point, he just gave up and was like, whatever. His family just saw it when it worked out for them, and that's great with my blessings because honestly, what can I say? So yeah, those were my first 2 weekends home, which were great. So I'll start with the first. That's right. I went to Missouri Paracon. I've never attended one of these. And when I learned about it, I lost my full head over it. My favorite ghost hunters were there. And I can't express to you who also may not yet know the full extent of my weirdness. Although if you follow my channel with any regularity, you should know. You should know. I feel like it's been fair warning by this point. But, and especially if you know, usually when I talk about books, I love my ghosties. And so I love to read and write ghost stories, and so I definitely wanted to go for inspiration because a book series that I'm currently working on involves paranormal investigation. But anyway, the conference, I went into it thinking I would try to film some footage and splice together a little video for you of the happenings there, but I honestly wasn't sure how that was going to pan out, so I did end up doing a little intro on the day that I arrived. Hello, this is Rumor, and after an early morning start, I caught a flight from Chicago to Kansas City, and I am now checked in at the Ameristar Casino, ready for a nap, because I am still jet-lagged from flying into Chicago from London a few days ago, and tonight I need to be awake and fully alert because I am going to the Belvoir Winery for a paranormal investigation. That's right. I'm ghost hunting tonight, and I do not know what to expect from it, but I'm psyched. I just hope that I can stay awake for it. Otherwise, my snores are going to drown out everyone's EVPs. Anyways, I don't know if I'm going to be able to take any footage there or throughout this whole weekend, which is the Missouri Paracon, the first of its kind here in Kansas City. And I'm so stoked. I'm going to be meeting my favorite ghost hunters and others. And yeah, anyways, I better rest up because I can already feel the fog coming on. So I'll see what I can come back with. Hopefully, there's enough to share with you by the end of it. At the very least, I can recap my experiences with you all if I don't have actual footage from it. Bye. From that point, I didn't end up taking a lot of photos or video. I mean, first of all, everything was very dark. And I wasn't going in with any special equipment of my own, although everyone was welcome to do so, and people did. That's when I realized I was like the one rookie of the bunch because everyone else seemed to have not only attended conferences like this before, but like engaged in investigations before in their own local societies. And so, yes, they all came a lot more prepared, where I was just kind of showing up like, here I am now, entertain me. But it was so cool. And I, I have this paranoia that one moment where I allowed myself to just kind of smile to myself in what I thought was the pitch dark, but then I realized there was a night vision camera that could have caught me. Just having this big dopey smile spread across my face as I'm in this cold bunker in the pitch black otherwise with 20 strangers. But I just found myself having this utter delight that I was standing there in this situation with kindred spirits. I'm like, oh, these people get it. They get me, at least this side of me. And I had never had that in my in-person life before. And after watching shows like this for so many years and now trying to write about it, I couldn't believe I was just in the middle of it and actually experiencing it. And it was so neat. So what I was paranoid about was that when I thought no one could see me smiling, it might have been captured on camera, and maybe they looked at that later and thought it was evidence of me getting possessed or something. I was standing in a corner where there are alleged sightings of what they believe was a schoolmaster coming to discipline the children that would run into this bunker that was being used for cold storage at the time. And maybe that's something I should get into. Where this investigation took place, first of all, the investigation itself wasn't like a standard part of the admission for this conference. It was an add-on. But when I learned that they were offering that, I'm like, yaha, I'm doing this. And so it was about 15 minutes offsite of where the event was being held at Belvoir Winery, which used to be the Oddfellows home, which I guess historically was similar to the Masons. It was this organization that had various locations, and at this one, the building where the winery is, and they've actually refurbished it to include an inn on an upper floor. That used to be the orphanage and school. There was also a hospital and an old folks home. There's a cemetery where members of this organization could later be buried. So it really just seemed to be this big property and complex that could accommodate one's needs throughout the different stages of their life. So if you were a member, I guess the idea was that the Oddfellows would provide for you. And anyways, the orphanage building that is now the winery and inn is the only building on the property that the current family who owns it invested money into refurbishing. Otherwise, it's a very, very expensive task. And so I don't know if they will ultimately work on the others in time, but for now, they are just these old decrepit properties that were really eerie to walk among as we went from the main building to the bunker for one of the investigation sites. And you could just see where like there were some windows broken out, boarded up. I've seen on TV when professional investigators have gone in So I've seen what some of the interior looks like of these buildings, and it is just basically in shambles and probably a huge hazard for just letting a bunch of conference attendees just randomly wander around without signing a waiver first. Anyways, we were a big group of close to 100 that they divided into roughly 4 groups of about 20. So, okay, so there must have been 80 so of us. 2 of the locations were inside that former orphanage building, and then one was in the bunker, and then one was in the cemetery. And so we had an hour at each one before then we would rotate to another. So between 8 p.m. and midnight, I got to have this experience in different spots with different people heading it up. And the first one was led by Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files. And a couple of his colleagues, and it was in a room. I don't know if they ever even said specifically what that space was at the winery, but it was just like this larger room, and he had a spirit box set up, specifically Frank's box. So anyone who watches these shows like I do, you probably know what I'm talking about. The idea is that it rapidly scans through radio frequencies, which creates a sort of white noise. And the idea being that if there is another sort of being, like a spirit, could tap into that somehow, harness the energy of that, the noise of that, to form communication. And so people will hear words and phrases coming out of that in response to their questions. And the Frank's box, I believe, was the first of its kind. When it's called a Frank's box, it is one that was actually made by this man, Frank, and there's only so many of them that still exist. Whenever it's shown up on one of these investigation series, the investigators are so psyched to have the opportunity to work with the original box, because there's just something about it that I don't know, it kind of ups the intensity on what they get from a more modernly created version of the spirit box. But if you listen to it, it's hard to describe how it sounds. It's just very like, you hear a lot of static. With Frank's box too, you could tell it was going through different radio stations. You could hear like voices and music just kind of, but it's all just like very staccato. And anyways, I wasn't really hearing anything coming through that, but then in another room, which was the ballroom, Adam Berry from Ghost Hunters, he came on to Ghost Hunters through the Ghost Hunters Academy. He was selected to get to be on the official show when he was so young. He looks like such a baby back then. And he was often paired with Amy Bruni. And so the two of them, when they ultimately left Ghost Hunters, they did their own show called Kindred Spirits, which I have to say is probably my favorite ghost hunting show. They're great. I really, they had a compassionate approach to their investigations that I just really appreciated. They speak to the spirits like they're people, because they were people once, if you believe in such a thing. But anyways, so Adam was leading one of the investigations in the ballroom, and he had a spirit box there, but he also had other equipment like there's this one thing called a dead bell, which this isn't it. I bought this at Disney's Tower of Terror. But you know, the dead bell looks like one of these old-timey hotel reception bells, but it's on a wooden block, and inside it's all wired up to be an EMF detector. So EMF detectors can often have like a sound or a light that goes off, and in the case of a dead bell, it's... So you can manually hit it like that. So it could ding because of a physical force like that. Otherwise, it's just because it's sensing a shift in the electromagnetic frequency that surrounds it. And do I want this piece of equipment so badly? Yeah. It speaks to my Victorian heart. But anyways, he had a couple of those set up on either side of, no joke, a coffin that had an actual skeleton inside of it. The skeleton's name was George. The real identity, anonymous, but it was a former member of the Odd Fellows who donated his body to the community to be kept on display as a memento mori, basically, a way for people to confront and contemplate death. So I guess each one of these Odd Fellows homes has its own skeleton named George. They're all named George. But in any case, they had moved this one from where it usually rests in state downstairs at the old orphanage up into this ballroom, and then chairs were placed in a ring around it where we all sat, and there were tripwires and cat balls, which are types of paranormal investigative equipment that will light up, also sensing things. So it was like a lot of bells and whistles going on there, but the most intriguing thing was with Adam sitting among us asking questions were these dead bells, each sitting on a chair on either side of this coffin. And I think this was the third rotation for me, so they had already been going at it for a couple of hours and having a conversation and engaging with someone in the room. And so by that point, they had identified two of the children from the orphanage that were there, and they were friends with each other. So it was almost like they had taken a seat on each one of those chairs, and then they were replying to the questions with the ding of the dead bell. A headmistress was identified in there as well. Again, you guys, I'm saying this, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not expecting you to believe it. I don't know if I do. I'm sitting in there. I didn't like personally sense anything. I didn't see anything. But I heard these bells going off, and I saw these lights going off in response to questions, and it was intriguing. It was an exciting, like, experiment to be a part of, especially when there did seem to be a narrative forming. And that's what really intrigues me with those shows too. The ones that are done really well, I feel, where they are reverent in approaching who the spirit inhabiting a space might be and what their past might have been, why they are still here, if there's something they're trying to communicate, if there's some sort of unfinished business they need closure on. It's the story that I love. And so there was a bit of story being woven here then with these children. We're creating, if they were friends with each other and kind of hanging out in there. There was some communication from George. The best part of that particular rotation, though, was when there was a woman, another just participant, just like me, but again, clearly had investigated before. And she was begging Adam if they could do this two-person spirit box session like he and Amy Bruni have done before on Kindred Spirits, which is really cool. So again, the spirit box is like that Frank's box where you just have that kind of white noise static going on, but they wanted to do it using the Estes method, which is where you listen to it through headphones and blindfolded. So you have sensory deprivation. So you're really tuning into that sound. And then what that does is you leave it to someone else to ask the questions. And the idea is that you're not hearing what you want to hear. If you're just playing one of these boxes out loud and you're asking questions, you might have an idea of what you want an answer to be or what it could be. And so then that could manipulate how you're hearing what comes through. And you're like, oh, it said this. So if you have someone else asking the questions, the person listening to the box can't hear what those questions are. They're just saying out loud what they're hearing coming through the spirit box or the Frank's box. So it's when their answers make sense in relation to the question that's being asked when things get really interesting, because the person asking the questions has nothing to do with the answers that are coming out, and the person who's giving the answers, they're just listening to that. They don't know what the question is. And so when you end up getting a back and forth conversation like that, it's eerie and it's compelling, and it just makes you wonder, well, what is going on? And then, especially when you have two people who are in the headphones and the blindfolds listening to the spirit box, and neither of them can hear any questions, and they end up talking to each other. That's kind of mind-blowing. And again, what is going on? Because they can't hear each other. They don't even know what's being asked. They're just saying what they're hearing through the spirit box, and yet they seem to be talking to each other. And I'll be damned if that was not happening with Adam and this other participant when they did this. So I got a little bit of footage of that, which I will share here.
Do you want to hold my hand?
Say something.
Safety.
So they know.
Expert. Did you just touch this light on the ground?
Finally.
Your hair looks fine.
It took an hour.
Let me fix it.
It was like heaving a rock.
So that was just a very little bit, because I could have filmed. I mean, first of all, I didn't really know like if I was allowed to, but I'm assuming because they were inviting everyone to bring their own equipment, which would include recording devices, yeah, there probably wouldn't have been any problem if I just wanted to film the whole thing. But even when I felt a bit more assured about that, then I just was feeling like I wanted to be present in the moment, you know? I wanted to really be there. And, you know, it's just too distracting for me to be filming. And that's why, just in general, I usually don't take a lot of photos and videos if I'm on holiday or whatnot. It's just, I think I'm just too in the moment to even think about it in the first place. Or if I do, I don't always want to be like snatched out of the moment. And so that's why I didn't catch very much. And so that was kind of like silly bit that I did get, but funny. And all I can say is that their responses were making a lot of sense in the context of the questions that were being asked by people in the circle surrounding them, and like other things that they were saying to each other. They did sound like a couple of kids having a conversation with each other, and so it was neat. But at one point, George did enter the picture and say that he didn't like being up there with the children. So he didn't really care for the fact that his body had been moved. So I think they were going to promptly put that back down after that evening was over. But anyways, in the bunker, it was interesting. There were interesting questions going on. There were people with psychic sensibilities that would say who and what they were sensing. There were people who were getting touched. And at one point we sang. We sang London Bridge is falling down, and then we sang row, row, row your boat in a round to see if it would encourage any of the spirit children to sing with us. So I did not have any equipment with me to be recording if there was anything. You know, the professionals that were there, they would review what they obtained through the night after the fact. But yeah, like just being a part of it and being in the dark and singing these children's songs with a bunch of strangers. I mean, it was so eerie. I just loved every second of this and just didn't want it to end. And then my last rotation ended up being out in the cemetery. So as we're approaching midnight, I am standing in a very cool and misty cemetery, and they were doing more spirit box sessions. They're using the Estes method. If I wasn't so friggin' cold and jet lagged, because I had just flown into town just a few days before, like into the United States in general. So like by 5 or 6, I'm hitting a wall. I am just a whole bag of dirt from that point. So, I mean, you can only imagine approaching midnight. I was just like, okay. So I could have volunteered like and had the experience of doing that, but I just did not feel like I had my mental faculties about me, and I feel like I would have been feeling way too like unprotected and vulnerable to step into something like that. But it was neat, like getting to be able to like throw out a question for the others who were doing it, and you know, they had other pieces of equipment that were going off throughout the headstones there too. But we did end up cutting it short just because it was cold. So it's time to call it a night. But anyway, that was just the paranormal investigation. That wasn't even the conference. That wasn't to start until the next morning. And so already I was like, this was enough. That was the ultimate for me. And so then the next day, and the next 2 days were basically set up where like, I guess it was from 10 to 5:30 with a lunch break in between. Every hour there were talks by the special guests that had been invited to be there. A lot of them, if not all of them, known from television. I wasn't familiar with all of them, but 6 people from Ghost Hunters were there. And I mean, Ghost Hunters was like my first and favorite paranormal investigation TV show. And oh my gosh. And I always had 2 favorite pairings because they tend to partner up as they're going through a space investigating. And my 2 favorite pairs were Amy Bruni and Adam Berry, and Dave Tango and Steve Gonzalez. Like they're so endearing. I loved them. And all 4 of them were there. Dustin Perry and Chris Williams were there too. OG members of that cast and crew. And so it was just awesome to see them and even meet a couple of them. And there were others like Jeff Belanger, who is the author of the Yuletide Monsters book that I will read when I'm doing my bibliofancy at Christmas time, The Fright Before Christmas, which I've used for the last 2 years. I picked up that book because I was interested in the content of it, talking about creepy Yuletide lore like Krampus and the Yule Cat. And I hadn't heard of that author before. And then look, now here he is at this conference. And so he's really cool. Everyone there was. There's a Netflix series. It was just like a 1-season series called 28 Days Haunted. And a couple guys from that were at this event. And I'm blanking on everyone's names. And there are certain shows I hadn't seen yet, like the Holzer Files, which just sounds amazing, with Shane Pittman and David Schrader. Joan Mass from Ghost Brothers spoke at this conference. He was great. And anyways, I could go on and on and on, but that's kind of like how the day was structured. And then there would be these add-on workshops as extras if you wanted to go. And then each night, the Friday and the Saturday, like 6 o'clock, the bar would open. And then in the theater, there would be a concert. So Friday night was KCDC, a local AC/DC cover band. And then Saturday night was Disco Dick and the Mirror Balls. It was so much fun. I really liked the approach of everyone that was present at this conference because I felt like they all came from a very grounded place with like a healthy level of skepticism to look for the natural explanation for things first before just assuming it's a ghost, and especially before assuming it's a demon. A lot of them joked that they were like, really, if you had the powers of a demon, like you could be anywhere, do anything, really you're just going to sit inside a doll or take over some random schmo's body, like, really? That's what you're gonna do? It doesn't seem likely. So yes, I liked that. I like belief with a healthy dose of skepticism, and that was definitely like the essence of those there. But speaking of dolls, there better not be a demon in this one. I did mention, didn't I, that the following weekend when I returned to Chicago, my niece and I had an outing to American Girl doll. Chicago being the first store, which is exciting. I actually didn't know that because I wasn't into American Girl when it first came about. My niece, she's now a grown woman. She's 28 years old, but she had a couple of American Girl dolls when she was a kid. So I'll be honest, we went ironically. We went with like a too cool for school attitude, like we were just going to roll our eyes and kind of laugh at this whole thing because we both listened to this podcast, Flightless Bird by David Farrier, who is from New Zealand. David is continually learning about America and what is different about it from New Zealand, what is like delightful or demented about it, just kind of whatever sparks his fancy that he wants to dive deeper into. And so, prime piece of Americana, at least in more recent decades, is the American Girl doll. So he devoted an entire episode to that. And just from him introing this episode, I was already giggling like a little girl, just like I was so excited for it and what he would have to say. And just picturing him going into a store and sitting at the cafe. And so that's what started this whole thing. My niece and I listened to this, and I don't know if we were aware there was a cafe. I guess if we knew, we didn't know that the cafe served alcohol. So we were like, oh, we should just go and just get drinks and just like laugh at this whole thing. And then they had dolls that you could borrow. And so like after listening to this podcast episode, my niece found this segment that Conan O'Brien had done about a decade ago where he went to the American Girl doll store in LA and he borrowed a doll to have lunch with because they give you these little seats that attach to the table so they can sit right there next to you. And so if you don't have a doll of your own to bring in, they'll loan you one for the meal. So we just thought, we're hilarious. We're going to go and do this on a total lark. So my niece makes the lunch reservation, and just the two of us, two grown women without children, walked into the store. And I'm just telling you, by the time we walked out, we were like enamored. No irony about it. We fell in love. She has now been asking her mom to like find and bring out her dolls from childhood and all the clothing and accessories that she had, because she has this newfound love and excitement for them. And I never owned one. I never was into dolls. Dolls just like as a rule creeped me out even as a child. I had a Cabbage Patch Kid, and I did have a Barbie doll and a Holly Hobby. Those are the 3 dolls I remember, but I only had like one of each of them. Everything else though was stuffed animals. Stuffed animals. That was my thing, especially panda bears. And so that's how I've been the rest of my life for the most part. But I have to say, I mean, around the time the Barbie movie came out and Amazon was like advertising Barbie at me whenever I would go on it, the homepage, I saw this Barbie. I bought this on Etsy because black. All my dolls must wear black. But she came in a fabulous outfit, this like ruched silver knee-length skirt and black tank top. She's cool as hell. And when the weather warms up, I will put her back into that. But she did come with these black booties. So I just, when I saw this being advertised at me, I was like, is that what Barbie looks like now? That's cool. She looks cool. So I love her. I have had her. And then, of course, as I admitted, sorry, just had to get her back on her stand there. She sits at my desk here. But as I know I mentioned in another video, I left her across the room, and I'll just leave her for the time being. Or will I? I'll go get her. I did end up buying a She-Ra doll, or action figure, I guess is the more appropriate term, because I always wanted a She-Ra when I was little, and I never had one. So I bought this one for myself. This is like a reimagined She-Ra by Mattel. I've got the head on that has this mask, which like the original She-Ra never traditionally wore. I think she looked really cool though. And I would show her original head where she doesn't have the mask on, except I kind of broke it when I was popping it off to put this one on. Her hair became detached, so I have to fix that. So this is why I can't have nice things. Can you tell where my mindset was at when I made this shift, where she was just kind of more open, holding her sword with her face unmasked before? This was like me in boundary setting mode. And so anyways, she lives on the top shelf of my Buffy shrine over there because I think she's got total Buffy energy. And anyway, so those were like doll acquisitions that I've had of late, and yet it's still not something I ever considered myself to be like really into, but American Girl, my heart melted, and I ended up bringing her home with me. She is from the Truly Me line, and she is number 107, if anyone's interested. Her hair is lighter than mine. Her eyes are darker than mine. She does not look like me, but I did want a brunette doll because I'm brunette. And guess what? She didn't come in these clothes. I picked them out because I wanted her black. I wanted her to wear something that I would realistically wear. So I got her a little black American Girl t-shirt and black leggings, which I friggin' live in. I don't have these though, sparkly combat boots. But I do have combat boots, but it's fun for her to be in the sparkly kind. And of course, a denim jacket, which is one of my favorites that I wear, alongside a black motorcycle jacket. So guess what? I got one for her too. So I just bought things piecemeal, but her particular model number comes in this like camouflage t-shirt dress and white combat boots. So I do also have that outfit for her. But for right now, I just wanted her to wear something that looked like something I would wear. And I love her. Even the sleeping eyes. Even the sleeping eyes. Those used to completely freak me the fuck out. But I see her sleeping and I'm just like, oh, she's so sweet. She's so sweet. So what is this, you guys? I feel like it's a combination of two things. Like, I know the Barbie and the Shira thing all came about, and this is still part of that. You know, like, after I lost my dad, I was doing a lot of spoiling of my inner child because I just had that inner little girl who just missed her dad so damn much. And she still does, of course. She still does. So I feel like a part of it is still like nurturing that. But I don't know, you know, I also don't have children. And so like I have found myself like carrying this doll through the house with me and just loving brushing her hair and putting her in outfits. I think there is just that fascination with things like miniature. I've always loved mini tiny things. So even if I wasn't into dolls when I was little, doll houses were always a fascination for me. But I don't know. I also just feel like maybe this is just bringing out sort of like my maternal nature that is there and has its outlets outside of actual raising of a child, and maybe it's appealing to that in some way too. So like my inner child and my inner mommy, I don't know, but all I can say is I'm not going to say, generally speaking, I love dolls now, but like I sure have warmed up to these, and now I'm a bit obsessed actually, and I'm already thinking about the next one that I want to get. And I know which one it will be, but maybe I'll save that as a secret because I'm going to make myself wait. I'm going to make myself wait. But, oh gosh, is there anything more I wanted to say on that? Probably not. I feel like I've gone on and on and on about this so much, but okay, can I bring this into the cards somewhat to make this somewhat relevant to my channel? Maybe like a little bit, but not too much. I found it really ironic that the card that I pulled for the month of March, which I drew in advance of leaving town at the end of February, because I pull a card every month from the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle. First of every month, I draw one as my message for the month, and I keep it on a stand at the corner of my desk over here. So 1st of March, I revealed to myself, me time, enjoy your own company. And let me tell you how easy that is to do when I'm living under my mother's roof. I was like, ha, are you joking with me? But I felt like it was there as a reminder to like, if there was any way of finding me time, and if it could possibly be a time beyond just like when I'm on the toilet, or at least just making the most of that time, if that is all I can get, or like in the shower, to try to carve out that time. Few and far between, but I felt like this was a good reminder of doing that, because otherwise I do very like fully hand myself over when I am in that space. But I would say I found a great balance this time, and it was a really good visit. Aside from like my quirky little outings, I had like very good quality time with all family members. Being able to be there for my mom's 82nd birthday. We had a party for her, and it was a combo birthday because one of my brother's birthday is also around the same time. And so that was like soon before I left town. So that was a great chance of like just getting to see everyone before I went. So that was another notable highlight of this visit. And otherwise, I thought I would get more time for contemplation to do some snake meditation. If you saw my previous video, I did one about my personal year of the snake. In the Chinese zodiac, of course, it is the year of the snake, but this actually doesn't have anything to do with that unless it's a meaningful synchronicity. But I had drawn at random, seemingly at random, you know, I don't know how these things work, but from my animal spirit oracle deck to find an animal guide for the year. And I got the snake. And so wondering what that means for me and my year ahead. In this video, I did a whole unpacking of how I have seen the snake appear throughout different tarot and oracle decks of mine, throughout mythology and religion. And it was really just like scratching the surface of it to inspire me to do more of a deep dive, do more research into the symbolism of the snake, the animal itself, and just see what that takeaway is and what lessons that I need to be learning. Unfortunately, like after making that video, you know, it was this visit to the States and everything just being busy, and I didn't get that chance to continue my work with this. But now that I'm back in town and getting my, you know, marbles rounded up, back up, I'm hoping to continue where I left off. And this particular card was taken from the Lunar Nomad Lenormand deck, which, yeah, Lenormand, look how big this is. I use this deck more as an oracle deck than Lenormand readings, usually just pulling one main focal card from it. The guidebook is gorgeous, really lengthy, lovely guidebook entries. And this one in particular had a meditation that it recommended for like entering the bardo, just kind of this liminal state to confront the snake. I think it was confronting the things that frighten me and vocalizing that, and in that way reclaiming power from the fear. So I brought this with me to the US in the hopes that if I found an opportunity to do it, I could. But as I didn't want to do it while sitting on the toilet, I didn't. I didn't end up having that kind of time. But to be continued then. Otherwise, the cards that I brought with me, well, my Fool for Tarot deck, the deck that I created in homage to Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I brought my linen version of this, which I finally got around to edging in a deep red. This is actually a combination because I started out with Distress ink. I think it was the brick red, but I do think that my ink pad was getting a little old, that it just wasn't, it didn't look great. So then I ended up going back over it all with a red Sharpie, and this was the end result. It was very like deep burgundy color, and I love it for the red that's on the backing, and then the splashes of red that can appear in the deck itself. But anyway, so I brought that with me to the States along with this Roses, Dust, and Ashes Oracle, an oracle featuring cemetery symbols, same creator as the Southern Gothic Oracle, Southern Botanic Oracle, Rhythm and Blues Tarot that more recently came out. But look at this. It's shaped like George's coffin. Lovely guidebook. But as she who hangs out a lot in cemeteries, and I'm not just talking about Buffy, I'm talking about myself. I used to live very close to one of the Magnificent Seven cemeteries in London, just like a couple of blocks away from it, and that became almost a daily walking routine for me among the Victorian headstones. And you just do see this different symbolism in them. Each of these cards is associated with a headstone, with a traditional symbol, and they are there for a reason. They are chosen and carved for a reason. We don't really maintain this tradition so much these days as our headstones get flatter and plainer. But back in the day, I mean, there was really a lot of thought that went into that. And so anyways, that's the gist of it. It's paired with these keywords that correspond with what these symbols might mean. So anyways, I thought these two were interesting together. I mean, Spike being of the undead, living in a mausoleum in the cemetery, it seemed fitting. Vampires rising out of the grave. Oh, happiness with the high priestess. Something about seeing Drew's dolly with the flowers. It's very sweet. Nine of cocoa with freedom. That's kind of nice if you're thinking of like that state of satisfaction and contentment that comes with this. There's a freedom you can find in that fulfillment. Ace of cocoa, breakthrough. Maybe that's a breakthrough emotionally. I don't know. But anyway, that's just to flip through a couple of random pairings. I did have a really meaningful reading with this while I was at the Paracon, actually. I had gone to the psychic gallery reading, and I went in with expectations low that the psychic Sarah Lemos, I went in with the expectation that she wasn't going to call on me, you know, that her readings would be for other people. And I was fine with that. I wanted the experience nonetheless to see like what her process seemed to be, how she communicated the messages, and how the people they were intended for received them. And I'm telling you, I was brought to tears with it not even being about me. It was so moving seeing people receive messages from loved ones. And you go into these things with a healthy degree of skepticism. And so I'm sure there are some of you listening that are probably like, what? Even people that are into tarot. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're into psychics and believe that they can like give voice to the dead. But I'm assuming that in this community, maybe, you know, people are more open-minded to such a thing. But I'm just telling you, she was so specific. It wasn't like where you could try to wedge anything into a message. It wasn't building off what people were saying either, because the people she was speaking to weren't really giving any details back to her for her to extrapolate from and expand on in taking an educated guess on what might be relevant to this person, if you know what I mean. I feel like there's a term for that technique for the people who are absolute charlatans taking advantage of the grieving and pretending they have this gift when they actually don't. And they do have that way of reading people to be able to say things that might be specific enough to them that it seems relevant. But but when I say specifics, I mean, I'm saying this is stuff where it would not just across the board apply to anyone. And I do not see how you could look at someone and glean from them that like, oh, their mother was estranged and they learned about a brother they had never known about until after she died. Like, that's specific. And it was spot on for this person. There was someone she was talking to where she was like identifying characteristics of the person and passing on a message, and then she kept like patting her forearm. She's like, I feel like your arm, did you get a tattoo? Like memorializing this person. And then this woman, I could see her, she was a couple rows ahead of me, without saying a word, she just draws her sleeve up to reveal the tattoo that was on her forearm that she got in memory of this person. So it's just things like that. It was really beautiful. And so anyways, I did not get a personal reading, which again, fine. I didn't expect it, but of course, you can always hope. So I went back to my room to have my snack, and then I pulled my ducks out and I did just ask, like, hey, was my dad there? Because I was kind of like envisioning him there, and that if he were there, like that, just knowing him, I could see his demeanor, and not that he's the same in the spirit world, but you know, he was a very like modest, humble person. I could just see him being there and being like too shy to say something, or like not wanting to cut in line ahead of someone else to say something, or maybe not even like broadcast something publicly in front of a room full of people. And so like that would be very fitting for him, and that's kind of like how I was seeing him on stage next to this medium. Anyways, as I'm back in the room, I just first asked, was my dad there though? I was shuffling the cards, and you know, if I get a flyer, I will usually take that to be the answer. And so as I was shuffling, there was one that was wanting to jump out, but I don't know, I recovered it. And so it didn't fly out. But then even as I started to reshuffle, I was like, I think that was the card though. I think that's where I was supposed to cut the deck and start drawing from that. And so I hadn't fully shuffled yet, so I knew where it went in the pile at the bottom of the deck. And so I flipped it to find that card, and it was the King of Cocoa, or the King of Cups, which is my dad's signifier card. Answering the question, was my dad there? So, of course he was. There you have it. Am I done? Am I done? I think I need to stop talking and just hug my doll. Maybe take a nap. Since the shellac hasn't completely worn off. I don't know. But thank you so much for joining me here if you have. If anyone has seen a little tiny socks hat that would fit this little head, please let me know where I can find it. As I continue to try to make her look like me, I have ordered a pair of eyeglasses for her. But I also want her to be her own person. She's not me. But anyways, thank you for joining me here. If you've heard me out through this whole spiel, here I went on thinking I didn't have anything to talk about, and I really didn't say much, did I? I just said a lot about a little. So thank you for your patience. I am excited to be back here in my own habitat and back to making more videos. So I've had a break for a few weeks, so I'll see what inspires me next. But if there's anything that you're interested in seeing, because I never ask that, do I? What do you want to see? What do you want me to talk about? I never open that up, do I? Let me know that in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, whatever your beliefs, whatever you think about anything that I've talked about today, I'm grateful for you. I hope that you're doing well, and may peace be with you. Bye-bye.